from the last meeting. I did attach them to the bottom of the email. It was more just sort of an update than anything else. There was a couple of actions around uploading some stuff onto Teams, which I did. I was only able to do it yesterday because I've had a real challenge getting onto Teams. So apologies for that. I think really today is about just going around the groups and getting the updates if we've got representatives from all of them. And then James, your opportunity to show off and show us what you're doing, so hopefully we can learn a bit from you, mate.
Sure.
Cool. Great stuff. So going around the groups, compliance and health and safety. Dave, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, we still haven't met up all the people in the group, to be honest with you. I've been flat out because we've had a restructure and my boss is off to pastures new, so I've ended up picking a load of stuff up. I did set up those folders in Teams for people to put in their example AIRs, EIRs, etc. I think there was one other person I think that's put something in there. And I still was going to go and sort through the Uniclass tables and pull all of the entries that relate to compliance and fire safety out of there into a sort of mini table and drop that into there. And I've also, we've just signed off the last couple of our process maps, so I'm going to upload those into Teams as well. So that's so that will probably be of use to people. There was one thing I didn't know whether to raise it in AOB or not, but has anyone seen those invites from British Standards online at all for the BIM stuff?
Don't think so.
Yeah.
From Aman Sharma.
I'll see if I can dig it up. Just bear with me a second. If I just share this. It's going to take time to load up now. Hold on. Ah, here we go. Can you see that at all?
No, all we can see is your inbox. I think you need to switch the screen.
I'll just switch it. Bear with me a sec. Log it again.
Luke, you've got your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Can you see that?
Yeah, it was about David, where he said he was going to do filtering on the Uniclass to create a mini table for fire stuff. I have already done all of that, not for fire stuff, but specifically for building services, so M&E. So that might help you. All you'll have to do is then go through and pick out the like the fire stopping, fire doors, because I won't have recorded that. But I can send that to you.
Oh, perfect, man. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Can people see that screen now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Has anyone seen that at all?
I don't think I have, no. Anyone else?
No.
Guessing no.
No, I haven't seen that.
It's a little too small for me to read even with my good glasses on.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a summary?
Yeah, well, basically it says British Standards Online is a simple online tool that acts as your standards management system. BSOL gives you access to BIM standards as well as 9,000 standards related to the built environment. So I haven't had a look at it yet because I only got this email myself a couple of days ago. But I'll have a look and see if there's anything new in there that that people haven't seen, and then I'll stick whatever I pull down into a folder for you.
Yeah, I mean, would you mind either uploading that?
Yeah, I've seen the email. There's nothing in there that's GDPR non-compliant. So yeah, I'll send it. I'll stick a copy of the email in the folder, and then people can have a look themselves, I guess. Yeah.
Great stuff.
But it's obviously they've picked up on you know, advertising what they can offer for it. But I don't know what, you know, what if any of it is new, and it may just be a rehash of previous stuff. So cool. Yeah, that's it for me, I think.
Okay, David, in sort of terms of what you think the next sort of the output, obviously the output is content in some respects, isn't it? In the you know, this sort of short list of the compliance and fire elements.
Yeah.
And then what, sort of sharing that round to spark some comment and conversation?
Yeah, basically, yeah, because I think we'll need to look at what the naming conventions are already in place for Uniclass, and then where possibly there are gaps that practitioners think need to be in there, because obviously, you know, if we want to try and standardise on using at least the Uniclass descriptors, it makes sense for us to make sure that you know, we've addressed any possible gaps. And I remember from the last meeting, you know, George was saying how they haven't necessarily split it in the most sensible way in some cases, you know. So rather than just having, say, fire stopping and then subclasses of materials, they've got like a different, you know, descriptor for each type of fire stopping depending on what the material is. So that's the sort of thing that we want to sort of tease out, really.
Okay.
All right.
That's great. Thanks, Dave. Any questions for Dave and questions off the compliance, health and safety benefits group? Nope. Okay, we'll move on. Data and updating. So who's on this one? James. Ali's supposed to be joining us about past. Luke, you're on this one also. Someone want to put their hand up to give us an update? Not all at once. Luke or James, really, it's up to you guys.
No, I don't. We haven't really had anything since our original meeting, have we?
No.
No, so it hasn't gone anywhere with this one.
Okay. Can you remind us sort of what did you at your first meeting get to what you were trying to get as an output, or what the exam sort of question was, what the answer might look like? Can't recall off the top of my head.
I'd have to find it because we only had 3 of us, and I can't remember who the third person. I can't remember who it was. He was the one recording all the information. But we don't have a chair, do we, on ours? Is it only 3 of us in this one?
We've got Ali Imam from Origin, Paul Dixon from Southern Housing Group, and then James and Luke.
Am I thinking a different group?
I haven't got you down on any other groups, so.
No, this hasn't gone anywhere, this one.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's right, no worries. Can you obviously just try and get make a bit of progress for next one, which will be presumably sort of middle of January. Appreciate there's a couple of weeks off in there. I mean, maybe we need to kick. I'll talk about under any other business when the next meeting is, but maybe kick it towards the end of January. But if you can make some progress for next time, that'd be great. Cool. Software. Alex, do you want to update this one, mate?
Unmute myself. There we go. Right. Okay. So we've had one meeting, and we're talking about at the moment doing a data collection exercise, a survey, to go out and understand what the state of BIM preparedness and BIM product is amongst. Well, in the industry generally. So what we will be doing is asking you to answer questions and also forward and highlight this survey. I'm supposed to have pushed the survey out last week, but I must admit I haven't. And Gary's obviously done some revision on that. What the group have done is we've got together, we've talked about some questions, and we've all taken away an individual task to look at the questions before I pull them together into a survey form and publish. The sorts of questions we're going to be asking are those. In fact, if you have a look on the files, Gary's put a file onto the Teams page, which I had open a second ago, but now I'm lost in Teams. But it was called. Let me try and find it. New folder. what's it called? Draft BIM survey software version 1 in the files under operations. So if you want to have a look at the sort of questions that we're pulling together, there's also the questions themselves in the original innovation survey are in the files section of our operations post as well. So that's the document that I'm asking people to look at and review. But we'll pull that together and use a SurveyMonkey and then just ask half a dozen or so simple questions, get people engaged and see where we're at. The idea then is that we can then go forward to the well, we can reflect on what we've got, but then approach the software vendors and say, okay, what are you doing about this? Basically, to try and provide a bit of a push.
That's great. Thanks, Alex. I mean, essentially, we're kind of looking, it's almost separated out into a couple of different surveys, didn't it? So the one that I've uploaded is the survey that will go out to providers. And having spoken to a few people, not providers, but just people over the last month, I think a few people have sort of suggested to me that it might be better to keep that survey quite high level, on the basis that if we want software providers to participate, they might be a bit sensitive about participating with too much information, either that they feel that they would be potentially giving away advantage, or indeed saying that their product isn't particularly match fit at the moment. So we've tried, I've suggested that we try and keep it quite high level initially, and then maybe individuals that have relationships with those providers could do a bit of a deeper dive if that suits their organisation. Second survey is something that I think, and I forget who it was on the group who tried to do this via email a few months ago, is just to see who's got what systems in play at the moment in their organisations and to map all of those.
Yeah, that was Paul.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. So I think, was that the content that you put together originally?
Yes, the latter one would be the sort of housing association local authority questionnaire that we want to send out for end users, for employers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good, ideally, if we can try and get these surveys maybe launching out in January when everyone's back, a bit sort of hopefully fresh after a Christmas break. The timing hopefully there will be quite good. So yeah, I think if everyone could maybe have a look at those surveys, Alex, that's what we're asking for.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, please.
Yeah, and just to get some comments, and then let's just get them out. We will be, I think, relying on people from this group, but also using your extended network as much as possible. So people in the other groups, but also just people who aren't part of this group. If you know they've got a relationship with a particular provider, if you can bribe them with a coffee or something to get them to send it out to as many people as possible. I think this piece of work will be more valuable the more data we have. I think it's going to be quite interesting to see what it comes back with, to be honest. I really don't have a clue. And I don't have a clue how many providers will actually partake either, whether a lot of them will just be quiet. But I think if they are quiet, that probably tells us quite a lot anyway. Yeah. Great stuff. Thanks, Alex. Good update. Business case, Sarah. I don't think Sarah's with us today, is she? Nope. So I can't really give an update on that. Models 3D, 2D. So this is Jack and me. Jack, do you want to just give a quick update on where we are, which is a bit covered by the survey stuff, but
yeah. So I've been trying to kind of put together a little document just on the kind of options for modelling. So just kind of, well, no model, photos and floor plans, photogrammetry, or 3D modelling. I could probably actually do with a little chat with Luke. I think you guys have done a bit on actual photogrammetry, haven't you?
L&Q have, but I wasn't involved in that.
Right. Okay.
I wasn't involved in that. They tested it out on a couple of properties with 3D photos. That would be. I can ask.
Yeah, I mean, so I've just kind of broken it down into, pretty simple at this stage, but can obviously, improve on it as depending on what people want. But just, what it is, how difficult it is to do, is it, its current kind of availability, and then what does it look like? So, it just kind of very simple stuff. But what is there other information that people would like to see in there to kind of, help inform decisions on this? Or
when we looked at it in NQ, the 3D photograph using 3D photography seemed a bit too expensive to do, so it actually worked out 160-degree photography was a better option. because it's much cheaper and much quicker to do for a building. You just get a 360 photo, and then it's looking at attaching to
yeah. You know, I get how it works. I would, you know, getting a bit of feedback on how it actually, you know, how it went for you guys.
When we looked into it, the cost was too high for 3D photography to do it for everything.
I've got a laser scanner here that I'm going out with today. Very kindly free of charge from GeoSlam.
Nice.
I'm hoping that I'll be able to kind of so this is just kind of, you know, overview stuff, and then, you know, if people want more on the actual, you know, modeling part, I don't want to provide loads on the kind of 3D stuff, which is more what we're doing, and then nothing on photogrammetry. So I'm not quite sure what people want from it a little bit. So if people have any ideas of what they would like in it, then I'm kind of happy to do that. Just I'm not quite sure what's useful or not. And you know, there's going to be a lot of stuff out there, so I don't want to put too much in and people look at it and be like, that's a, you know, 12-page document. I don't have time to read that. So it's just kind of understanding about what people would actually like.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, Jack, that we talked about when we were picking this around in the meeting was kind of what do you do with that, and the point Luke just said about tagging information in these systems. I think for me, some comment on how easy or difficult that is would be useful.
Yeah.
And software or systems used, and because I think this whole thing about how the ecosystem of software that we're all beginning to use and how they interact with each other is probably one of the biggest challenges for operations for me.
Yeah.
Kirsty, you got your hand up?
Yeah, just to say I'm in the BIM team at L&Q. Luke, we haven't met yet, but hello. I'm sure we will at some point. And we are currently looking at 360 photography providers to do a trial on one of our projects. I know there's been trials in the past, but we're going to be doing another one, so we can definitely give some feedback on that. And I don't know if Johnny has told you about the GTI initiative that we're running. So we've got a work stream in that specifically for visual records, which is looking at 360 photography and sort of the purpose for it in terms of the building safety case specifically, but what information you need to collect and things like that. So we could probably connect the two together, I would suggest.
Yeah, I'd be interested. What I might do, Kirsty, is I might pass your details on to one of the people in our team, because we've done laser scan models for 2 buildings. We used a crowd called Marshall Surveys to do it. They knocked up the point cloud model, which then PRP have turned into a 3D model. But also we're doing the 360-degree photographs internally to match them up with the model. And what one of our surveyors, Zena, is one of the companies that offers the scanning services, is looking to offer training courses so that she can be taught how to do the photography and the scanning and stuff. I don't know whether she needs a drones pilot license for some of the stuff, but yeah, so she's sort of taking that forward. So I wouldn't mind just passing, if you don't mind, pass that across.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, cool.
So Jack, GeoSlam has obviously looks like they've lent you one of their mobile scanners. Is that again so that you can see how difficult it is for you to do this stuff yourself?
Yeah, so we've been out previously with Leica and Faro scanners, but it was terrestrial scanners, you know, tripod, press go, it scans. Whereas this is a SLAM, so it's simultaneous locationing and I don't know another word, measurement. But you walk with it, so you know it should theoretically be a lot quicker. You know, imagine it took a couple of days to go around a building and go into flats and go into areas and move the scanner. So we're just kind of want to see what this one's like, and will it reduce time on site quite substantially? If it does, do we lose much in terms of quality, or is it still pretty good? So yeah, we're giving it a go with the idea that hopefully it'll be something that we can continue on with.
No, that's good. We got GeoSlam to demo the handheld device on a couple of floors of one of our tower blocks, and they're able to do a floor in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Compared to tripod stuff is a huge difference. So yeah, I mean, obviously you have to walk out the rooms backwards, and there's a technique to it. But you know, apart from trying not to fall over, it seemed pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to get feedback from you guys as to how easy it is within your organisation using their software, because we didn't do that. We just basically got the point clouds and then did some work with the point clouds afterwards. They did everything ahead of that. Yeah. So I'd certainly be interested to get your feedback, Jack, as to how you find it.
Yeah, I'd imagine it'd be very simple. I just had I kind of ended a demo or a kind of walkthrough with them just before this, and they were just saying about the scanning. I said, I have to go, you know, is there anything, you know, about actually, you know, using it? And they said, oh no, it's very simple. You know, so they didn't even bother to kind of walk me through, you know, point cloud registration or, you know, switching it on and scanning. It was all just, you know, you want O loops rather than U loops. And if you've got a small area, then you want to arc outside it, you know, some kind of, you know, bits and pieces. But I think it's going to be very simple, but happy to feedback once we've done it.
Just on a technical level, this is, so you go and get your point cloud, and then you're trying to integrate that into your common data environment, right? So you're going to try and hang BIM additional supplementary data beyond the points. How is that at all automated, or is that an entire manual process to go, oh, I've spotted here's a service pipe, or here's a fire door, or?
Yeah, so it's manual at the moment. We're hopefully about to go out and try and get someone with kind of perhaps dynamo skills or things like that, so that they can help to automate the process of the kind of thing. But yeah, at the moment it's go out, do the scanning, get the point cloud, take that into Revit. In Revit, create a 3D model and kind of you know, then take that into a database and you know, link the data that you want to those tags within the 3D model.
Mm.
Okay, great, thanks.
Good. Thanks, Jack. It's a really good update. Thanks, Dave. Obviously, we've got a mixed bag of progress going on. So I think it's always sort of the case with these things, isn't it? Everyone's stupidly busy, and it's hard to carve out time. So I know it's difficult. Obviously, we'll have a meeting again in January. I think probably in January it's worth just taking a step back and reviewing how these groups are. Certainly, we've got a group with one person on it who seems to have disengaged a little from the group, perhaps busy. So it'd probably just be worth at the next meeting to take a step back and review membership of the different groups and direction and where we're going, if everyone's okay with that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Great. Okay. James, over to you with your case study.
Sure. So there's a few bits and pieces I'll run through. I did have a long presentation that we've given out several times to different people, but I don't think it's suitable to go through that full presentation. So I'm going to flip through bits a bit more and pick up the bits that I think are relevant to you all. I think there's a couple of you that have already seen elements of this, so apologies for any repetition. Hopefully there's been some new bits that come out of it. So I suppose just to start things off, just to recap on where we came from with BIM. I joined Orbit about 5.5 years ago, came from a consultant background. So we'd been pushing from BIM from a point of view of architectural, QS, takeoffs and stuff like that. I came to Orbit and there was people talking about BIM, about wanting to do BIM, but nobody really knew what on earth they were doing or what direction they wanted to take. So they looked to me as being somebody that had some experience with BIM to start to move things forward. I'm going to pick up my presentation actually. Let me share my screen. And that's where we sort of started off. Which screen? That screen. So, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
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 So I'm not going to go through the full presentation. So I'm just get the screen sorted out. See what's going on. I'm not going to go through, as I say, the whole presentation, but I'll just flip through some relevant points. I think you all know who Orbit are, housing association, registered provider, 42,000 homes, building 2,000 a year. So when we gave this presentation, it was about the background of our first BIM project. We went through the challenges that we went through and then what we ended up with. So that's what I'm going to try and run through today very quickly. So in terms of, as I said, I came to BIM and Orbit said we wanted to do BIM. But I started asking questions, well, what does that mean? What do you want from BIM? Because a lot of people, when they say they want to do BIM, just don't get it. They don't understand what it is. They say, let's do BIM. And they don't really have a focus on which direction they're going to go. You're all familiar with that diagram. On top of that, then you've got the dimensions of BIM. And as I say previously, as I say, if you're this is what I went through on presentation. If you're a contractor, you might be interested in those dimensions of BIM. But for Orbit, it's about, I very quickly realised it was the long-term focus of what we can get from BIM and how we look after our buildings. Interestingly, as a consultant, we've never had a client come to us with any sort of brief about doing BIM. They didn't have, we'd never had the client came and said, right, we want to do BIM. Here's the approach to do BIM, and this is what we want from BIM. They just, particularly in Orbit, nothing really been, they've not really thought about it. So we very quickly decided that we wanted to focus in on the facilities management side of it. So we set off, I sort of got a little bit of ground with I started talking about BIM, of what it might be able to do, and people started to get a bit excited. So when we set off, we were after getting this full and accurate asset management data in a mineable format, which was the term that was used at the time. Obviously wanted some visualization in the building and 3D walkthroughs and things. We wanted to better analyse the whole life costs, reduce reactive maintenance, build more preventative maintenance routines. So these are the type of things that people were starting to get excited about, that we could head towards, but we needed some way to actually start sort of progressing with it. So just to briefly, I said, I'm going to get into detail of what we actually did, which I didn't do in the presentation, because I think that's more useful to what you guys, the level of understanding you guys have. So very quickly then, the scheme that we had was a 189 unit scheme in Stratford, right in the centre of Stratford near the train station, next to the town centre. It had an extra care facility on it. It had some apartments, some market sales, some rented, and it had some houses of different tenures. So it was an ideal scheme because it had a type of building that we built, whether it be houses, apartments, or extra care facilities. So it was a great scheme for us to run through. So the first challenge we had was the contract documentation. We'd never done it before. We had no standard contract documentation in place. Now, I'm very used to writing sets of employers' requirements as a consultant when I acted as an employer's agent. So I had a good background of putting contracts together, but there was just nothing that existed for BIM. Now, 5 years ago, I was a bit fresh to this, although we've been working on it. I wasn't overly familiar with at the time with the other type of documents that existed, such as the OIRs and the AIRs. And to be quite frank, I just jumped straight into what we needed on the project, which was an EIR document. So I pulled together an EIR document based upon the 1192. We had a consultant actually look at it, and they'd made a few tweaks to it, but not many. And then we developed the IDP, and that's what I want to show you today, because that's what really, as I say, gave us the ability to really benefit from what we did on the project. I'm not going to run through Kobe because you all know what Kobe is, but yeah, it's from the American military. We obviously gave the description of it a bit like a Dewey system in a library, just to try and explain to people. We talked through obviously the taxonomy. Let me just go through this. I don't need to run through this with you. So what we needed to do was, and this is why I want to just change my screen for a second. I'm going to go back to I'm going to stop showing that screen. Sorry, 1 second. Go over here. So when I started looking at the asset data, one of the first questions that I had was of Orbit, what asset data are you holding at the minute? Okay. What we wanted to understand is what asset data or asset management systems were holding, and the intention was then to get that into the model. Okay. So all of the asset data which we currently hold, let's have that in the model and then link that back through to our asset management database. So I liaised with our asset management department and got a schedule of information, which is what this screen shows. This is a long list of every single bit of asset data which we might hold in the system. Okay. And they gave it to me in a list. Okay. Not in this format in the first place. What was key is that there was some specific coding here, yeah, which was Orbit specific coding. Our asset management database had its own unique identifying numbers. So we had a category. So this might be external walls, for instance, so number 10, but then the type of external wall with another number after it. So it'd be a 10-232 or 233. Now, these were all very specific and bespoke to Orbit. And I realized that if we actually wanted to link our systems to the model, we had to get all of that specific coding into the model, right? So we set about trying to work out how we could explain what needed to go into the model against which COBie fields for all of these different items, because if we wanted, as I say, the model to talk to our existing system, it needed to have these codes in there. So this document you're looking at is our IDP. Okay, we've got our asset classifications levels. We've got the level of definition details, descriptions as to what we're going to the definition to the level of details we're going to go into for different things. And then you've got this. So down in this column here, okay, these are all of the original Orbit attribute descriptions. I'll explain the different colors in a second. These are all of the different attribute sort of things which we were holding with Orbit's specific asset reference code for those items. So we defined what that would be in the drawn model over here. So this is a set of instructions. This is the IDP. This was the information which was given to the contract from the architect saying this is the information we want into the model and this is how we want it in the model. Because it's all well and good coming up with the structure of how you're going to store the information, but it's trying to explain where you want that in the model, how you want it in the model. So across the top, across here, we've got all of the COBie names that we use. We didn't use all the COBie fields, so these coloured items are the COBie fields on this sheet that we used. So we've been through and identified what COBie fields we wanted to use. And across the top, we put a list of the COBie fields across the top. For each of these items, then we've identified the level of detail required for that element of the drawn model in terms of what detail we want. So because you've got to instruct obviously your architect and your other consultants what level of detail you want to go into. But we then needed to say, because these are very specific to Orbit, what fields are we going to put these in COBie? So what this sheet does, I'll zoom out for a second. There's a lot of little coloured cells through here, which are basically saying for this item here, this is the COBie field that we want you to put it in. So you move across to the coloured line, and where the coloured line, it tells you what COBie field you want you to put it in. You've then, within these, so these different coloured cells mean different things. They can mean, as I say, there's a drop down input options, or we want there's fixed text that needs to go in there, or there's open values that go in there as well. So in each of these items, there was a little drop down button. And this drop down button links back to that first sheet that I showed you with the options that we wanted people to put into the model. Okay. So every single one of these. So if we get down to something more interesting, get down to, so these colours, just to talk these through now. So the blue ones were at our facility level. Then we went to the zone, which we had as a plot. The spaces we then has rooms, which in hindsight we might have done the other way around again. You've then got your types and then your components below that. So if I were to look something at a cold water system, for instance, or an external wall, maybe we watched that before, didn't we? So main wall structure. So we identify where we want it to sit. So we want it in the type data Kobe field, and there's a drop down list telling them what they need to put in there. So we added in sort of the description with a vertical line followed by the number, and that was a request from our IT department. So if they always write it like that in the model, we can extract that relevant information back into our IT database very, very simply and very quickly and very easily. So this was the level of it. This was the as I said, the instructions given to the team. If I run across here, then so if you get down into type data, we get these individual reference numbers. So these individual orbit asset identifiers, we've got those in a field within Kobe. So we told them to put those items in a field so that, again, the whole thing can link through. Now, what we found was that Kobe didn't have sufficient fields for the way that Orbit were storing information. I'm not saying, as I say, Kobe might not have the right fields if you fully align everything to Kobe, but our existing asset systems simply were not. So we had to add additional fields in here. So if you see, you've got type asset, the type asset type, and then we've got .1, .2, .3. So we've had to add these different fields in just to add the additional information that needed to go into the Orbit systems. You can see then you've got manufacturer model reference, replacement cost, life expectancy, a lot of other stuff to go in here as well. In terms of the yellow items that are amended here, all these yellow items here, the reason that they are a yellow is that halfway through the project, Grenfell happened. And our IT, so our health, our customer safety and our compliance teams suddenly had a look at what information we were holding and realized that we needed to store some more information. Now, given this was our trial project, we couldn't very well continue with our trial project without adding this additional information to the project. So halfway through the project, we had to add a load of additional fields in, of which you can see there are quite a few things that we just weren't holding before, which you can imagine the architect, construction, the consultants, it was a bit of a pain for them mid-project to do this, but after them, they took it on. They realised the benefits of what they were doing and the need for it, so they ran with it. What this then is identified another problem with IT, asset systems, Kobe, and the whole interface with everything. And that was a decision made by our IT department. When they added all these new items in, they added them all under the same attribute number because it was the easiest way to do it. So historically, everything had its own attribute reference number. But because our IT department were looking for the quickest, simplest way to add information in there, they decided to add it all with a single attribute reference number and then add and have separate type codes. Now, this was something that we'd not had to deal with before. And it made us realize whilst we found a solution for it, it made us realize that you've got to have rules in place as to how you add asset data, how you move forward with adding asset data in the future. You have to have this skeleton, this structure of how data should be recorded. And this was fundamentally why, after this trial project, we stopped. We didn't go and retrospectively do any buildings or start moving forward with it, because we realized until we have a standard which we can work to, which is never going to change, it's pointless storing the information, because we're going to end up, it's going to end up in a format that we can't use, which is why we started reaching out to people and thankfully found groups like yourselves to start talking to. Everything I know now, sitting in these groups, probably do this differently. But we had to face, at the time, we had an asset management system which we had to relate to. It wasn't an option of changing the asset management system. Now, after going through this, the conclusion that we've come to, and I think most people are on board now, is that our asset management structure and system has to change. We can't keep going with what we've got and the way that we actually, the way that it's working. because it's so unique to Orbit. We have to have an industry standard. We have to have something which we store asset information in an agreed, recognized format that anybody providing information, as I say, in Kobe or another method, provides it in that way, and our asset management system can talk to it. Now, thankfully, we are going through a huge IT investment at the minute, and we do have the opportunity to rewrite our asset data system, which is what we are going to do. As soon as a standard is agreed, we will rewrite our asset system to match the new standard across the industry to make all of this far, far easier. So in terms of what we ended up with then, after going through this, I'm just going to run back to the presentation for a second. So just bear with me. The interface that I've just showed you, I've talked to you in a bit more detail than this presentation went into. I'll run through another quick challenges we had. One was actually controlling the supply chain, because we had all of these different consultant suppliers all feeding into the different consultants. And to be honest, it was causing confusion and ownership issues. So what we ended up doing was identifying where the responsibility was best placed. And we split up the suppliers into 3 different categories. One which the architect would look after, and another 2 which the consultants would look after. Now there would be crossover where you might have some people providing information to more than one of us. We defined who was going to be responsible for those consultants to make sure the information was checked and it came through correctly. Software was another challenge. Getting Revit to talk to the Orbit systems didn't work. So whilst we provided this set of instructions to the architects to get the right information to the model, the next challenge we had was getting the information back out of the model and into our database. So whilst we had the right coding in there, we still didn't know exactly how we were going to get it back out and into the model. What we ended up doing was using the plugin Dynamo, which I think has already been mentioned today in terms of what that does, or the benefits of it. This created a transcript of information, an algorithm basically, which extracted information from the model and broke it down into its components, and put it back into a format that we could give to our IT department. So what this ultimately did is put everything into a spreadsheet which our IT department could use. So we worked closely with the IT department as to how that spreadsheet needed to look. So what this output needed to look like, so that the information coming out of the model was in a way that we could get it into the asset management database. At the end of the project, we were given a memory stick with all the data on it, which our IT department literally took off us, and by the end of the day, that information was in our asset management database. Every bit of information on the screen was in there. Other challenges we had, we did trial augmented reality, where you could you'd have the model in your phone or your tablet, and you could walk around the site and see, well, there shouldn't be a socket there because there should be a radiator there. It worked, however, it probably led to more frustration than anything else because of the internet connection and speeds. So it was probably quicker to go to the office and get a drawing and come back and have a look than it was to use your iPhone to wait for the information to download. So whilst the technology's there, it was just a bit cumbersome in terms of how it was there. Well, as I said, the slow speed, which just led to frustration. So that was a trial. It was abandoned. I'm going to skip past that one. So, and that one, that was when Grenfell happened. So what do we end up with? We've ended up with an auto load of information into our database, through what we called the BIM loader. So this gave us over 500,000 pieces of information that from this memory stick went straight into our asset database. Now that level of detail is something we have never had before. I think in our latest sort of asset management surveys across our 43,000 properties, we got between 2 and 3 million pieces of information. So on 189 properties, we've now got over 500,000 pieces of data in our database. The bigger challenge is now is what do we do with it, and how do we keep it up to date? And that's a bigger. We can see sort of an agreement not too far off in terms of how sort of a national standard might work in terms of assets. We can see that coming. The biggest challenge we think is going to be actually keeping that up to date, and it's got to be linked through to, as I say, people's orders and procurement, and they don't get paid until they've provided X, Y, and Z information in a particular format. And yeah, ideally by apps and stuff, so they go into the properties and download information. But it's a huge challenge to actually keep it's a massive challenge to keep it up to date. We calculated it would take somebody 68 weeks to input that level of information, which we did in a couple of hours with the download. So it's clearly beneficial to if you can get the systems to talk to each other like this. Now, another thing that we so what we ended up with, understanding of COBie, but we were questioning whether COBie's suitable for our needs, because we found it lacking in terms of the level of detail it went into. Now, I think as I've learned more about COBie since then, and particularly being involved in some of these groups, I think it's less lacking than I thought it was, but I've still got questions about whether it's the right thing for housing, given it came from the military. I'm not 100% convinced on it yet. It doesn't feel quite right. There are gaps in it. So we'd always said, the principles of COBie are fine. The hierarchy levels, the way the information is recorded is fine. It's just the detail as to whether we've got the right detail in there or not. Now, we did have a great video in this presentation, which I cannot run over Teams, unfortunately. But I want to show you some extracts from it as to what we've ended up with. So it wasn't just a download of the information that we've managed to get. We've obviously got a beautiful 3D model. This is the building it came out of, but that is an interactive model that we've got. So if you zoom into any part of that building, you can click on items in it, and you get you'll get the information in a box there about the asset. So when everybody's looking at any information, they've got immediate access to anything that's in there. So that runs to the structural side of it. That's from an architectural point for the windows. So any component in the building you can click on, and you get that level of detail, and down to the M&E side of it as well. I'd have loved to have been able to show this interactive model. It just won't work over Teams because it's too cumbersome and too big. But the way you can move around this model and check stuff, and the way you get this up in a little pop-up box is so user friendly in terms of how to go and interrogate that information. So I guess that's our show and tell. We realised that facilities management, in summary, we realised the facilities management was the way to go, and we needed to link the model through to our asset management database. That was our challenge at the start. That's what we wanted to do, and the only way we could take it forward at the time was to look at what data we currently stored and get that into the model. The conclusion from that, as I say, is that we can't continue with our current asset data storage systems because it's unique to Orbit. The work that the consultants had to put in to get in the information into the model in our format was a lot. There's a lot of work that went into it, and you cannot do that scheme after scheme after scheme. You have to have an asset data standard, which is a standard so that every supplier in the country, when they're supplying any product, supplies in exactly with the information attached to it in exactly the same format that everybody's using. And that's what's made us pause. That's why we're not progressing with anything until we need to understand how the skeleton works. We want to understand how the bones of this pull together. And until we've got that in place, we think that any more trial projects, whilst they might teach us things, there's more benefit to actually talking in groups like this and trying to come to consensus about what the best way is to move forward. Great. Thank you. Has anyone got any questions?
Well, James, brilliant presentation and really insightful stuff. There's a lot of stuff there that certainly piques my interest and resonates with me. But guys, do you want to throw some questions at James?
Yeah, I've got one if that's okay, James. So the 500,000 or over 500,000 pieces of data, are you looking to kind of going forward? Will you have, say, a BIM object type thing so that when you take across those 500,000 pieces of data, there's, you know, let's say, you know, 50,000, and it's just saying, you know, this object is of that type, and it looks up, you know, that set of data under that type. I'm not explaining myself very well. Does that make any sense?
You mean this so you look at a particular window on the scheme and it's just picking up the type of window, or is it specific to that actual window itself? Is that what you?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. In the model there, it will be specific. You know, each window will be, but obviously, you know, windows, lights, whatever, there will be, you know, a consistency. So on the asset management side, you know, I guess it's easier to store that data if you're just looking up the one type of light that's across the site, rather than transferring all that data.
No, I see where you're coming from. I guess the issue is actually you could potentially, yes, bring it all across in one go for a certain type of a light fitting, for instance. But once it's in the asset management database, it's got to be uniquely identified as a separate light, so that if you were to ever change that particular light fitting for a different one, your asset management system knows that that light fitting is now different, and any link back to your model also knows that that light is different. Now, given that the algorithm that was written as automatic, it probably wouldn't speed up downloading the information into your database, whether it came across as a type or a component level.
So I guess I'm not thinking that coming across, but you know, if you're kind of extrapolating, you know, what did you say, 189 units, you know, 500,000 pieces, and you only had 2 or 3 million for the stock before that. You know, ways to reduce the amount of data that you would need to store within your asset management database. You know, and I'm thinking, you know, if you had a table that it was looking up, you know, this is a specific type of light fitting, and you could, you know, you could then say, you know, that's X1, and it looks, and you change it for an X2, and it looks like a different table. And rather than filling out, you know, each piece of information against that one fitting, it's just saying, look up this standard object.
Yeah, no, I can see that benefit. I guess the question is, if you change that particular, if that fitting you can't get anymore, and you've got to change a different fitting, the rest of the building might be the fitting, and you've got a couple of light fittings that have got the new fitting, and it's recording that difference between the two, isn't it?
Yeah. So I guess you know, you would, I don't know, you'd have your schedule of lights throughout the building, and they're all X1s, and then you change one for an X2, but all you change in your, you know, your system would say X2, and it would look up the X2 table with that list of parameters, I guess. Is that something you kind of thought about? Because, you know, I'm trying to work out, obviously, you know, getting IT on board with this will be quite important for us, and trying to make it as kind of efficient a system as possible is something I've been kind of giving a bit of thought to. We're just kind of trying to get your thoughts on
I'll throw an IT word. Sorry, I'll just add something to this. What you're talking about is database normalization or denormalization. That's the technical term that the database guys uses.
The words like analyze there.
Exactly. So that's the word you want to drop when you're having that conversation with IT, and then they'll suddenly understand what you're talking about. But I suppose the question for James is your data all unique? Have you actually got 550 objects, each one of which you've got, and they're identical, and you've got 1,000 bits of information about all of them, which is how you get your 500,000 object rows of data? Or is there this lookup? I think is that the question that you're asking?
Yeah. The information will be repeated in that 500,000 pieces of information.
Yeah.
But you're quite right in terms of how this would move forward. It would come through as types. Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. And in all, I'd have to be honest, I'd have to speak to our IT department to find out exactly how that came across, because I didn't see the transcript itself at the end, and it may well have come across like that as it was transferred.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're exploring is, and George isn't on the call, but because Active Plan have got that product library, which has basically got all of the parameters against the product, then in theory we can store the product category, once, and then just look up to his database online to pull the information back.
I guess that's how Kobe works, isn't it? In terms of the data exchange, that you have the types and the component levels come down to reference numbers and serial numbers and stuff on equipment like boilers. But you've got your type. That's how the database. That's how database needs to work. So yes, I fully agree that that's how it should work with any final solution for this as to how an asset management data should work. It should store type levels in the same way that Kobe does. Yeah.
Can I ask James? I mean, fascinated in the model itself and how sophisticated that was, where you're able to hover over and see that information in your little pop-out boxes. I think that's great. How is this actually being used in your asset side of things? Well, what are you seeing as your sort of key benefits of having this available?
If you need to look at something in the building, rather than have to pull out your paper copies of your O&M manuals, you can look at that model. So if they're wanting to find, if they're looking, we had an issue with at the weekend actually with a power outage. So we're able to use the model to look at, as I say, elements of it, and rather than going to the O&M manual, it's almost like a living, breathing O&M manual, rather than, as I say, looking at papers and copies and everything. It's having that in front of you. It's a much more user friendly tool, which then links through to documentation as well. So you can, from clicking on those certain aspects of it, you can pull up the warranty documents and stuff from there as well. So you can, so in that respect, it's very beneficial.
Okay.
But as I say, at the moment, we haven't cracked how to keep the model up to date.
Yeah, and I think that's the sort of, that's where the magic happens, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
It sounds at the moment that it's used probably infrequently, but when you've got that link through and it can be updated, linked to your repairs, that's when it can be dipped into, kept updated, and then it becomes something that's even more living and breathing, right?
Yeah. It's one small piece of a big jigsaw.
Yeah.
It was a trial project to see what was capable. It was almost like, let's show the rest of the organisation what we can do here, what it's capable of. We need to try and sell BIM to the rest of the organisation so they can realise that it's worth investing in. So the sad fact of it is that model on that building will probably get out of date very quickly, and we won't be able to see a long-term benefit of it, because we haven't got the rest of the infrastructure in place yet for the long term. It was always a trial project. It was to whet people's appetite and show people what it's capable of doing. But for us, it was essential to do, because it taught us so much about what's wrong with our systems and how they need to move forward and how they need to change. So when they're talking about, as I say, new asset structures, no, you can't do that because of this. Look, we've proven it. If you do that, then you won't be able to do what we need to do on BIM. So it's helped convince a lot of people that the direction we need to be heading in.
And I think that's going to be one of the benefits of standardisation across the industry, because in order to get the contractors on board with, making sure that they do update that information, they're not going to do it if you're the only, one of their clients that wants that information. So there's definitely weight in numbers will help, try and manage contractors to actually provide this information as standard, rather than thinking it's a bespoke request from one client.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think this is where the work around the kind of toolkit, I suppose, that BIM4HAs is working on is really powerful. And as you sort of say there, Dave, one of the things that was a sell of that is if we're all using if not exactly the same, a similar starting point, then the supply chain can become used to that. It costs less to develop that from scratch. But I think the point that, James, that you've had to do, where you've had to tailor that, I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think certainly if we employ sort of hack standards and stuff, it can get better. But the reality is, I think there will always be tailoring for different organisations. But the more you can sort of reduce that, then the easier it becomes.
I suppose the question I would ask is, why do we need to tailor it for different organisations? Well, in a utopian world, why can't we all do it exactly the same?
I agree. I think we should and we could, but we're never going to get to the utopian world. I'd love that, because for me it is all about that standardisation. But with the number of different systems in play, and I just can't see a point in the medium term, let alone the short term, that we would be able to achieve that. But I think by using Hacked, using things for BIM4HA, getting to know the supply chain, we're chasing down on getting closer to that. We're kind of chipping away at it, and I think that's probably something that we, as part of this group and all the other groups that are going on at the moment, that's kind of our opportunity for us to sort of standardise and then let that bleed out through the rest of the sector.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for utopia.
You've got to reach for something, haven't you?
Yeah.
Reach for the stars. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Any other sort of questions, comments, observations for James at this point?
Have you hooked this into your maintenance side of things at all? So are you sharing information for your ongoing compliance, servicing and inspections activity, even risk management? And are you thinking about using this for anything to do with building safety cases?
Yes. What's the best way to say this? As I say, I'll come back to the fact it was a trial project to see what was going on and to understand and convince people, as I say, that it was the right way to go, and it got enough people interested to start backing it. I think the way that we are now is this, along with Golden Thread, draft safety bill, it's all connected. And my colleague Neil Yeomans, I think some of you might know Neil. He's our head of customer safety, and he is at the moment, he's got just about approval to have a new team in place for soft landings. And the idea is that we'll have a soft landings and a BIM team that work very closely together to bring this all together. So the driver from Orbit is actually coming not from a maintenance point and asset management point of view. It's actually coming from that customer safety point of view, the safety and what's come off the back of that, the hacking view. And I mean, Neil and I have we've presented our thoughts to the ISSG, Industry Standard Safety Group, which chaired by Dame Judith Hackett, and there's a couple of working groups we're involved with that at the moment. Exactly this front about the Golden Thread and the BIM and bringing it all together. Did I ever share with you all the spider diagram? Have you seen the spider diagram of who's involved in what?
I think we saw that last session, meeting 5. Yeah, pretty big.
It's crazy as to how many, there's so many different groups of people all working on this at the moment, all looking at it in a slightly different way, from a different perspective. And the challenge, one of the challenges at the moment is actually bringing all those people together. Because they're all looking at it from a different point of view, every group will be convinced that they've got the answer and that their answer is the best. And the question remains in my head is somebody up there, high up, is going to have to say, this is what this is the way to do it. We're going to do it because it deals with all of the issues, or 90% of the issues and queries that have come up. So yeah, coming back to your question was about safety, and every part of it's what's actually driving it in orbit at the moment more than anything else is exactly that. Yeah,
that's good. Actually, John, you were going to see if you could get consent to share that spider diagram. Is that something you can ping around?
Yes, I believe I got a response. Let me just check I got a response back to Smith. That was okay, and I'll get that sent out.
I've got a request as well, sorry, very rude. I think according to my notes, your asset management system you referred to is MIS. Can you get MIS to come along to these meetings? Can you invite them? Could you cordially invite to participate in the operations, particularly the software group?
It is IMS at the moment, but it probably won't be.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's still going to be helpful either which way, because if you can make the introduction and just get it as a group, right? We're a cross-industry group, so I'm interested because MIS they have other customers as well. Yeah. And the more suppliers who are here, because I'm a supplier, right? So I'm at the table, but I want other suppliers at the table as well. So we can work on this common consensus and get to a group think and get to the standards that everybody's talking about. So if you can make that introduction before that relationship breaks down, that would be great.
Well, we might upset them at some point.
You might. Right. Okay.
It sounds like James is worried about having his ex at the meeting.
We've embarked on Microsoft Dynamics, and it's intended that will replace a lot of what we currently do. It's still up in the air as to exactly which programs it's going to replace. There's the ones that will definitely replace. There's some it may replace, and some that we probably won't replace. But it's fluid because we're still learning about what Microsoft Dynamics can do, or what it can't do. Shall I say? Or its challenges. I don't know if anybody else has gone through Microsoft Dynamics.
Were you looking at field services or something like that for it?
For Microsoft Dynamics?
Yeah.
Well, we've started off by we've transferred our so procurement's gone over to it at the moment. HR's gone over to it, and our sales for selling properties and stuff, that whole process has gone over to it in the first wave. But it's been fraught with challenges, shall I say, to be polite.
Yeah. So L&Q moved over. We did have a big plan to move over sort of everything to Microsoft Dynamics. So the whole company have switched over to Surface Books, Surface Pros, D365 for everything, Microsoft Teams. But that sort of fell through. But actually, come to think of it, it worked out quite well. The fact that everyone has this remote working ability with what's happened this year.
Why did it fall through? Did you start the implementation?
So what they did is they were working on stages, and the initial stage was to implement complaints. So change our complaint system from Dynamic or from an older Microsoft system to D365, the CRM thing. That all transferred over, and then it was starting to look at assets and housing, and then working on like work orders and stuff like that, and finance. But that never. I think it came down to a budget thing in the end. That it was the budget was too much money for L&Q to spend on implementing it.
I was going to say, I mean,
and too much resistance. So they brought in
26 million, I think, is 26 million is what our current budget for it. So it's
they brought in the complaint system, and there was so much resistance to D365 complaints that it became such a headache to implement that. I think that's when it stopped. It's a shame. I personally looked into field services to see if that would work for a asset management system, and there is a way of doing it, but you need to actually, you can't use field services out of the box. You have to do a lot of work to put in like parent-child structures and having the ability to do one-to-many relationships and stuff like that. And unfortunately, the guy who was working on that with me, the head of IT in some, I can't remember one part of IT, but he left, so that fell through as well.
Yeah, I was going to say
that only got to a concept.
Yeah, we've done a similar thing. I mean, we've done the complaints and all that sort of thing. So more the customer side of things. In the day, Dynamics was originally a rival for Salesforce, so it's aimed at customers and orders and supply. You know, it's not aimed at assets, so it does have to be completely sort of mangled to do it. Interestingly, a couple of things from our experience. One of the things we are looking to use it for, and we've just been testing at the moment, which we built in house, is for the building safety management. So, managing the work orders on the, and the contractor competencies. So getting the contractors to fill in the forms to say which staff have got which competencies in which trade, etc. We've built something in-house that we think will do that, because we've already got one building, we'll have 2 buildings soon, that are already under the building safety protocols, because we've basically built the safety case, and because we've got that point in time snapshot, we need to now start managing an audit trail of the works in that building so that we don't end up throwing the money away that we spent on the safety case. So it looks like it will do that okay, but that's quite a simple process to do. But there is a word of warning. It is definitely the budget side that you've got to be careful of, because I know just doing the budgets for next year now, and our budget for CRM the last couple of years is now doubling next year. So basically we got really nice introductory rates from Microsoft to get the thing in. And now they go, oh yeah, well, that's your introductory period over. This is how much it's really going to cost you. Not to mention increasing the size of the database costs you money. The licensing costs you more money than you think. The training, as you said, the take up, trying to get people to use the system,
that's the hardest
is difficult.
bit.
I mean, luckily their new UI, which they introduced back end of last year, and which is coming to our place in May this year, it is easier to use now, the new UI, than the old way of doing it. Yeah, definitely the budgets, there's a lot of hidden gotchas in the cost. And if you are looking at trying to build massive amounts of stuff into it, the cost starts to escalate. Yeah. I'm happy to talk about our experience at any stage, guys. Just contact me and I can talk you through it. So,
yeah, just something that strikes me. I mean, obviously, I know Jack's doing some stuff on this as well. We are as well. We're going through a Dynamics implementation. I think we're all probably feeling some of the same pain. It feels like we could have a little sub-support group around Dynamics implementations from the asset manager's seat. So perhaps something to think about.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to organise an intervention for anyone who starts to feel that they really want to get into it.
So actually, in fact, I might be able to just share my screen with this. There was a sandbox thing for field services, and I'm looking, and it's only got the first line of an address. So it's fine. But just here, so this is as far as we got. So it was just this. Bear in mind, this was a concept, and this was like one person developing, me inputting some information on how to put it together, and then one person sort of leading things. So the idea was we were trying to figure out how it would fit into how you would fit systems and products into T365, and it just doesn't work very well. So you have your child assets there, which we threw in a few, sort of your detectors, the CHP, and then it was just around putting in how do you start adding all this detail in. But the problem is the way this works, this was adjusted from the original view. This doesn't, or is not compatible with the way services works out of the box.
So Luke, how many tiers of assets classes you've got?
So this was only we only did system and product in this, but in theory you could go as many tiers as you want into this. You can break it down as far as you want to. So if I go to hold on, let me have a look. It was I can't remember exactly where it'd be, but yeah, basically this was down to we only did this at our property level, then break that down to our system, then break that down to our product. But in theory, there's nothing stopping you from relating a system to another product, or a system to another system, or a system to another address, or something like that. But it didn't quite work, this thing.
Yeah.
But just,
I think Hitachi, the system they built for Clarion, had 4 tiers, because they showed that to us and we said, oh, we've got more than 4 tiers, and went, yeah, that might cost you some money to completely rejig it. So although they built something, they built it in such an inflexible way, really, that you can't really just sort of change it when you need to without going back to them for a load of money.
Yeah, I work for Clarion, and it's terrible.
Right. So everyone's signing up for Dynamics. I can see as a result of this call. We'll get information coming through the door, no doubt.
Definitely.
Anything further? We just wrap up.
Thanks. That was really good, James. Really helpful.
Yeah, that was really good, James. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I was a bit disjointed as I was trying to bring together bits of an old presentation with a bit more detail about the IDP. But yeah.
No, not at all, James. I mean, certainly from my seat, you nailed it. I think it was pitched absolutely right for this audience, and made tons of notes. I think it'd be really helpful for us on our journey at this end. I think for me, something that's really positive is coming out of this group. So the work that Richard did last time, what James has just shared with us here, and I think there's more of us want to sort of share, not necessarily the complete piece, but where we are and different parts of it. That's one of the real benefits of a group like this. We're all just happy, we're not too sensitive about it. We'll share what we've got and, throw it out for discussion. So brilliant. Thank you for doing that, James. Really appreciate it. I guess last thing then is just wrapping up on any other business. We need to talk about date in the next meeting, but has anybody else got any other business before we just wrap up with that?
Yeah, I just want to mention something, Gary. We're probably going to do some testing with the virtualization of the building with some laser surveys and some internal surveys. If anyone is interested in collaboration, then I'll be happy to share the details.
Yeah, that's great, Ali. Sorry, welcome, Ali. Didn't notice that you joined down there. Yeah, and thank you for sharing the details of your colleagues with me. I haven't had a chance to get back to them yet, but I will do in the next couple of days on that collaboration.
By the way, that email from BSOL, I've stuck that in the folder in the group. So
excellent, that's great. Thanks for that, Dave. Okay, so date of next meeting, I don't think we've got one already in. I won't go through actual dates now, but we're happy to maybe do it towards the end of January, maybe third week of Jan, just to give us a little bit of time to get our breath back.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent.
Could I ask a question, actually? Has anybody come across or used or have an experience with some software called Viewpoint?
No, you go on me.
Are you talking about Viewpoint for projects?
Very possibly.
Yes, as a consultant before L&Q.
And what do you think?
Yeah, it's good. I think they're probably one of the more progressive companies, as in they've made changes to their system and adapted quicker than some of the others in terms of BIM, being able to take different file formats and things like that. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but I know there's loads of others that, you know, you still can't upload Revit files, for example, which nowadays is a problem.
They've come up with something new or newish in terms of an interface and for the BIM world, and how to look at, as I say, models and update them and bits and pieces. I found it quite interesting. I've got a meeting set up with them tomorrow, so I'll see how that goes and feedback maybe. But I just wondered if anybody else had an experience of it.
No, but I think everyone will be really happy to hear sort of how it goes and what you think, James, because that's one of the missing pieces, isn't it? That link between models and updating. So, yeah, great stuff. Okay, cool. Unless anyone's got anything else, let's knock it on the head. Thanks everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. Hope everyone has a really good Christmas break and a nice quiet one, and a safe one in the current world. And I'll get a couple of dates around for January. Just stick a few bits in the diary, and hopefully people can let us know what they can do.
Cool. Great stuff.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great break.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.